Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Paolo here. The model I would like to introduce you today is this kind of holy grail from Italeri. This is a Scania 142 long nose, the long nose version of the 142, and I have plenty of them that I started to buy right now. They mostly live in Sweden. It's a country that I deeply love. Of course my wife is from there, and they have a very huge tradition of exceptional trucks. They are trucks that really rule the world. Between Scania and Volvo, they are really mighty machines. So I like it a lot, the stuff coming from the 80s. And this Italeri box is a very rare box that they made, I think, from the box art and so on. It should be something coming from back of the 80s, back in time. The Italeri had one of their, I think this was the second layer of the type of Italeri box that you cannot find in the truck range, because at the time of the very first layer they just had the image of the model or a drawing in the front of the box with just Italeri logo over there. So this is already Italeri. That was the British definition, because they discovered that the name Italeri was a little bit complicated for the foreigner people, not Italian mother tongue language people, to pronounce it. Probably today, being fancy to be Italian, it could be something interesting to return to the old logo Italeri, but that's it. This model is one of their, I think is, they didn't place any date over the box. Now there is some date in some boxes that say 1982, 1987 and so on, but this was surely an item coming from the middle 80s, from the layer of the box. Probably if you check on the very interesting website that is ScaleMates, you can find absolutely the history of this item, code 772, completely off production. This is something that is absolutely ultra rare. I remember that the most famous was the 777. That should be the Fiat Cowboy of the same identical series. A little word about Italeri trucks. The more the box you are searching is old box, paradoxically is better than the newest. I mean, the newest, they had a very nice improving of quality, starting from the Mercedes Actros MP4 that should be arriving from the postman, I think, in a couple of hours here, and I will make videos about that. That is a completely new mold. But these molds coming from the 80s, they were exceptional because they were, for the time, real masterpieces modeling, And this box was a version, of course they made the basic mold of the 3-axle Scania long nose, as well as the short nose, that is basically, if you can see that, is basically that box. Number 792 will be another one of my future video, and it is the 3-axle Scania that have been also, this is a very rare box. But you see, already the layer of the box is completely different. They had the different position of the picture, because they are meant to be displayed in a shop like standing up boxes, so you need to have the image this way, not to have something like this where you have to turn your head to see what's in the box. So basically the kit is a modification of that mold that allow you to make the I don't know if it is correct to say that in English, the conventional way of the truck, where basically the steering wheel, the steering rack is forward to the driver position. This is typical from the American trucks, more comfortable, better handling machine, less problems in maneuvering with the truck and so on. But this part is, in Europe usually they were all trucks with the first steering axle behind the driving position. It's very easy, because if you have been a truck driver, when you drive such stuff, it's very easy that you simply fold the steering wheel, and all the cab you see that is nearly falling like in the side of that. So I don't know if you understand what I mean, but it's something that is really influencing the driving. So it's much better when the truck have this type of configuration. Of course, the negative point is that you need space. And this being a completely Swedish truck, they have space up there. The country is amazing. The nature is, in my opinion, one of the, after my Italy, of course, is one of the best country everywhere to live. I love so much that country that you have no idea, really. And the space is not a problem, it's not an issue. So that's why, you can also have this type of maneuvering part in front of your truck, and this is not a big issue because the space is not a problem out there. Instead, if you go in the lower part of Europe, space, cost, money, and space is a problem, is absolutely necessary that the track is the shortest you can have to maneuver in the shortest position. So the shortest the cab became, the better it is for the lower European market. The box that Italeri made is about a wrecker. This is a BroWrecker from Kristinehamn. Kristinehamn is a place on the sea, on the Baltic Sea. I think it was the famous one where there was a Russian submarine that entered in the garden of a fellow. Try to Google about that. It's quite a funny story. I think it was really Kristinehamn. It's south in Skåne, and that's why the Scania factory also take this name, Scania, that is international, is indeed the region in Sweden that is the Skåne, written S-K-O. They have a strange letter that is like an A with a little O over that you read like O, Skåne. And it is all the southern part of Sweden, that have Malmö like a biggest city, it's all the southern part. They are very, very funny people because they are very, very kindly, and the language is extremely similar to Danish language. It's the only dialect in Sweden that I really, really struggle to understand. If you take somebody that talks Swedish from Stockholm or from Göteborg, I understand much better. In the north and the Lapland, also the same, Östersund the same, Karlstad the same. But when you take somebody coming from Malmö, Rosengarden, or Kristinehamn, indeed, it's quite tricky for me to understand because they used to talk in a very different way. Return to the model. This box is kind of wrecker they had up in Sweden, I think, big boy, and made by BroWrecker is a company making cranes, So Italeri basically made this first modification of the mold. So inside you have the ordinary truck, like here, plus this big bumper in front that take extra space more, and plus this big crane. This big crane have been used by many other configurations that Italeri sold. I don't know how they represent the reality of the real truck, because I've seen them made. I think it was that very, very good modeler. Help me, the guy making books, Ian, is an exceptional guy that made the very nice book about truck modeling, and he made a very, very nice version using a Fiat 190, actually 260 Fiat Iveco truck in a Norwegian configuration, using this type of wrecker configuration in a 6x6 truck. Is an amazing model. The same configuration you will find over Mercedes-Benz cab, and with the Ford. I also see they also made it with the Ford, with American Ford, the Ford 9000, I think it is the American truck featuring it. Inside the box you have a lot of parts. Consider that this model I found in an auction in eBay, they always became pricey. So this is not a model that you will find around for 10 to 15 euros or 20 bucks or something like that. This is always stuff that if you are lucky you pay at least $50 at least. And that's what I bought for it, because I know that it was a used model. So of course, for example, this is a plastic wrap that I placed not to have the parts floating around the box, because this was typical from Italeri. So the connection pins were extremely weak, as you can see. So it's very, very easy to break them and have them running around the box. You see the box is full of mjögel, they call it in Swedish, is mushrooms, you see. Probably something that really lived in a canteen of somebody. And the parts are floating around. Of course, the decal sheet is something that you cannot use so much. I tried to Pregnix Corpse. It is yeah, it's probably something that you cannot use so much. Look how completely destroyed is the decal sheet. I'm quite optimistic, because back in time Italeri used to have this stuff made by Zanchetti. Let me see if I can still read it from there. Oh, this was original cartograph, quarto inferiore, Bologna. And I'm not so pessimistic about the idea to try to use at least part of it, like the instrument dashes and so on. Of course not the mirrors and so on, but maybe the logos and so on. My tip is, every time you have to deal with something like this, before you start to cut the decal sheet, just make a scan in the highest quality you can about also the damaged decal sheet, because this allows you to have at least a kind of information about the measures, the dimensions, and all the logos that you will find in the decal sheet before you start to cut it, and before you have the risk to destroy everything completely, because very often this type of old decal sheet, when you place it inside the water and so on, they tend to really explode and to disintegrate in the contact of water. So if you have a scan before of the image, at least some logos as this one, if you really are willing to do it with this company logo and so on, at least you can save, and maybe redraw it with some programs like a Corel Draw or whatever, you know, to redesign your decal sheet and to prepare a brand new fresh decal sheet. I don't know if there is something about this, because this was a really a special box, you know. For example, the BroWrecker Christine Hamn logo, this was particularly from the company, you know, as well as the special logo of the 142h version, the long nose one, you know. Inside the box I have, as I told you, I already prepared a lot of little bags where I can try to save all the floating around parts. These were actually not so floating when I bought the part, but I just simply lifting up the part after so many years. They really start to lose the part inside the box. It's very easy to lose small debris of it. You can see the first edition of Italeri wheels. You know, it's strange because in some box like the Volvo they featured the different front metal wheel, you know, with the smallest hole and different holes from this one. This was the first edition hub that is totally off because it was completely lacking of detail. It is not made like they did here. So it's something extremely famous. If you Google around, there is a lot of other extra companies making the hubs in resin in the correct proportion, and you have constantly to study what's going on with the transmission, because very often the reduction, we call it in Italian, I don't know if it is the same name in English, you know, but we call it the reduction over the central hub of the wheel. If I am not wrong, this should be anyway a box where they have, despite it is a 6x4 configuration, it's indeed a 6x2. It means that despite we have 3 axles, so 6 wheels, the traction axle is just 2 of them, one and the other, not 4 of them. And we will see probably if they have the second differential for the transmission under, and I don't think so, because if I'm not wrong, I already had this box in another configuration. The third axle should be a dead axle, so it is just an axle to be placed. It's really hard for me to explain this in English, but I hope you understand what I mean. The third axle is not a traction, this axle is not a traction axle, it's just something that's lay on the road to allow you to have a better configuration of the weight that is pressing over the street, you know, and it's usually used for extra heavy loader. But the real 6x4, like for example, if you take a Peterbilt, if you take a Ford 9000, if you take a Mack or a Kenworth and so on, they always have the double transmission, and the difference especially much stronger than this. This is the ordinary transmission for the heavy load, but not the extra heavy load that probably like a super crane should it be. This is a crane truck, so you know. It was also very nice that they place in the instructions some images of the actual build that is always eye-catching, you know. What is incredibly nice for the Scania models is to see the real colors. You know, this was a printed instruction sheet of the 80s, so at the time probably they didn't have the possibility to make it in color, but if you check the real colors, this block of the motor, it should be painted exactly like the interior of the Russian plane. So it's that strange green, bluish color that is extremely nice if you make a little watering on it, and if you add the little tags and the little detail cable wiring and so on. So it becomes incredibly nice. And this part in the Italeri trucks, in all the Scania from Italeri truck, is a masterpiece. You know, it's something that's really eye-catching. For example, here also they tell you to modify the final part in a little generical point, you know, to cut it, because this was the original configuration of the tractor. So basically the chassis that you will have in this box is exactly the chassis that I showed you before about that truck, the 142 short nose version. So you know the chassis doesn't change. Here there is a schema that you see you have to align. It's something really kind of basic tips, you know, when you're going for build something like this. But as you can see also from these drawing pictures and so on, there is no secondary differential, and I think this is a kind of mistake that I did, because I don't know the real vehicle, but for sure, because I was exactly in the military corps that made this type of works in the Italian army when I was 20 years old, and I can warranty you that the vehicle that we were using to track our other, I mean, it was the Swedish we say it bogsering. It means when you take a rescue of another vehicle, you know, this is everything about the weight. So usually you can pull something depending from the crane that you have and depending from the truck that you are driving, something that is in the range of your vehicle or something little heavier than your one. Of course, with a vehicle like this, you will never will be able to pull a tank, for example, of a very, very heavy armored vehicle, because they are too heavy, you know. And indeed, for this purpose, of course, you need a secondary differential that in this box you will not find. You know, there is a difference like this one, but you don't have the secondary transmission going to the second axle, so I don't think it is a motion axle, the second one. I'm not so sure about that because I don't know the technology of the Scania. What I for sure know that was, for example, this mighty V8 I was explaining you before. The word is little, you know, have been made by Scania after the Scania itself took the projects from Lancia. So the project of the motors was something coming not only for the V8 schema, but mostly for the turbo and the intercooling supercharger of this truck was coming from the Lancia production that was overtaken by, like a copyright, was overtaken by Scania in 1964 when Fiat Group dismissed the production of the Esagamma trucks, you know. The model is indeed absolutely well done. As I say, these are absolutely the best, still today, status of the art truck modeling you can ever get. So if you can survive to the appeal, to the smell of the box that is absolutely not the best, you know, we have something that is really coming from the underground or somebody, some basement, wherever in the world. I don't remember where I bought this stuff. I think it was from Germany. There is some details like that, you know. It's kind of funny because they try to give you all the details. Remember that this is a mold of the 80s, you know, so I try to, because as soon as I move there is something loose. There is something that goes loose. You see also there is another part of the crane that goes loose. So it's really like to have a big puzzle with the parts. But there is tons of parts, you know. I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There is about, let me guess, 10 sprues. Am I right? 1, 2, 3. 11. 11 sprues of a truck, you know. Numbers that today are incredible, you know, and the detail is absolutely breathtaking. Of course, there is some silly parts like these wheels that they are not absolutely the status of the art. Italeri changed in all their box this type of huge black part printed in solid plastic with the rubber tires that they arrive later on the market, you know. But my idea is anyway that this one were not so wrong back in time, you know, because they were anyway featuring a Michelin X, while you know, for example, that the real Michelin X is the one that I made in 3D with the 3-legs sprocket wheel. And I think that I can use as well that 3D printed tire, because Andrea from KMP, that was the designer of that wheel, made it separately from my 3-legs wheel. So I have the tire that is available for this one. So it will be interesting maybe just to make a fitting of that wheel to be fitted over these rims. The point is that, like we said, also the rims are not so precise in the design, so they need something to be improved, something to be made nicer, and that's it, you know. The model is absolutely, in my opinion, a gem, a real masterpiece. If you study a little about the documentation about the Scania T142, I think it was the definition T was something that indicated that the truck was a longer version, a longer international version, you know, of the model. They write it wrongly. No, they write it correctly, like a 6th birth too. So it was exactly what I was telling you before. So the motion is exactly just on this axle. So this is a dead one, and this is the steering rack, and once again is absolutely fantastic. Even more for the BroWrecker company from Christian. So this is really Hansen, you know. I don't know if I can find proper documentation about the real stuff, you know. If you find BroWrecker is still around, I see, but they do ultra modern stuff, mostly based on 4 axle 8x8 trucks. So they make incredibly nice monster, you know. Really the up-to-date machines, the most powerful truck in the world, to have an idea, you know. The model is amazing. If you can find any kind of this, they made this box in the configuration of Australian Roadrunner, American Wrecker. There is a wonderful box with all the American flag over that I love it so much, and they missed it for nothing, you know. Was a colleague of mine that was selling it. He didn't know what it was. They arrived 1 day later after he sold it for, I think, nearly nothing. Once again, nothing in the range of 50 euros, something like that. You never get this stuff so cheap around you. If you find it, Italeri just recently made a reissue of this, basically of this box, but with the updating of the lower bumper and all the parts coming from the secondary series. I think it was even a 142, but this is little slightly different. So my tip is, anyway, if you like this type of Swedish trucks, buy them and collect them, because they are absolutely awesome models, you know. And in the modern box made by Italeri, sure, you have a fresher plastic. Also, that in my opinion is not so good, because this was the old-fashioned plastic, not produced after recycled plastic. So you have all the plastic, other loose part, you have all the plastic that are absolutely crispy, are absolutely hard, seems more similar to a resin. So it's incredibly nice to work with this part, because they don't have any surprise. Indeed, when you work with the recycled plastic, the feeling is always like to work with a kind of blob and something soft, and the details are not so sharp and detailed like it was with the original polymer of plastic coming from the original first production of the plastic for the mold, that today, I think, 2024, is completely forbidden to work with, at least in Europe. That's it, guys. This is my 2 cents about this wonderful model, Italeri, one of the best mold ever you can find around truck modeling. That's it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.